Well, Gary, what do we get today? That's easy enough to see. It's the SJGAM SJGAM video game screen HD 4.3 inches. This is, of course, the M18. Well, it's known as the M18. It has a couple other names. We're going to call it the M18. Let's see here. The box apparently lies to us because it says it has 4 gigabytes of RAM. A lot of people in our Discord say, no, it doesn't. It has about 512 megabytes, but I don't know. I'm not a computer engineer. Here's all your stats. I think what's most important is if there are disputes or other liabilities caused by copyright, it has nothing to do with their company. So take that, Nintendo. What do we get in this box? It's a shocked, stern-looking handheld. Oh, God. We have our handheld, a cord, and a manual in Chinese. I tell you what, right off the bat, this is very similar to my old favorite, the 405V. It's about the same size. This screen's a little bit bigger. Speaking of screens, this is apparently 4.3 inches. It's 480 by 272 odd pixels versus the squarer screen on the 405V. But on the back, I think, is where the similarities are very apparent in these, what would you call them? Butts. The butts. I think I prefer the back of this. This has the potential to be very ergonomic. I like it. We're not here to talk about the 405V. We're here to talk about the M18. So what do we got? We have select and start in a very angry face configuration. You have your home button. You have your minus and plus. I guess, is that volume? All your buttons and IOs are on the bottom. You have an off and on toggle switch, which is neat. SD card on the bottom. Headphone jack on the bottom, like that. And your USB-C power on the bottom. On the back, you have, this is actually pretty impressive. These are on a nice little angle. You can definitely feel what you're grabbing. And look at this. They're just regular buttons. There's not like a big piece up here that you keep hitting and toggling your L buttons. I'm looking at you, 405V. We have some switch sticks in a unique orientation, this diagonal from each other. D-pad, that's not too bad. And you have some nice skittly buttons. Oh God, they're clicky. Well, you know what? They're not clicky. Pressing up and down is not too bad. When you press them all at once, sounds like a horse is coming. Does this have a screen protector on it? Or am I going to destroy the screen? Well, while I'm potentially destroying this, I want to say that it did come from our friends at Go Game Geek. Thanks again, Go Game Geek. And I hope you haven't misplaced your faith in me as I rip the screen off. Did Stubbs open this, put a screen protector on it, and send it back? I don't know. That's weird. Well, heck, let's turn this thing on. Emulec is loading. Boy, you got a whole bunch of games. You got all the way from... It starts with PSP for some reason. PSP will probably be really good on this screen. But you start with arcade, MAME, all your Ataris, more arcade, PC Engine, NES, NES and hacks, Game Boy, Japanese Super Nintendo, American Super Nintendo, N64, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, not just Game Boy, Genesis, Game Gear, Mega Drive, Neo Geo Pocket, and PlayStation. Now this is a 3566 chip, which is the same chip as in the 353 line, or your X55. So you have a fair amount of horsepower. The only problem is it's all locked behind this rather restrictive version of Emulec. So system settings, I can see my version, that's it. Backlight, turn it to 100 or 0. That's my only options there. Sound, I can show overlay. That's it. That's the only options you get. You can't press select, you can't go find settings. It's just extremely locked down, which is not great. How many games do we have? What comes with it comes with over 20,000 games. I don't know if they're all good. It has Todos Juegos. I love when they use these Brazilian ROM packs and they just don't bother to take off the fact that it says Todos Juegos. So the home button takes you to this pause menu, and this is that's all you can do. You can save or load or quit. You can't get the RetroArch at all on the handheld. However, I have had this unit for quite some time, and I've fiddle-farted around with the configuration files on the SD card. And you can make some changes, and true to form, after I spent several hours trying to configure and tweak certain games, I found that on our Discord, someone had already done that. So I'll put a link to their GitHub if you want to just automatically optimize your cores as best you can. But right out of the box, this is it. This would be pretty good for a beginner, where maybe too many options or any options at all could just lead to chaos. But for any scenario beyond handing this to a kid, I mean, it's very limited. This is all you get. Resume, you get one save state, and you can either save or load. Speakers are pretty good. The screen is actually really beautiful. And you have this wide screen on a Game Boy. It's unique. I'll give it that. It plays very nice. Get out of here. Oh, switch stick's pretty good as a joystick. You can also use the D-pad. Take that, Hibiki. Screen's very nice. Can I pause this? The ergonomics are really good. I like these little butt cheeks they have hanging off the back. It's really good for your hands. And like I mentioned before, the shoulder buttons are in a very, very good place. Your fingers just kind of naturally curve. And I think this honestly improves a little bit on the 405V. Ooh, those triggers are very loud. Very, I don't know, like a deep crunch. Don't know if I like that. The games that come with this are just your standard numerical order where you can't find anything unless you back out. You can do a search. There you go. Here's all your Rockmans. Boy, that screen is beautiful. As I immediately get rocked. Got some nice widescreen NES. So your 4x3 stuff is naturally stretched to widescreen. It's not... I mean, it doesn't bother me that much, but it is kind of funky. Whoa. It's not the end of the world. Again, this screen is very, very pretty. It's very vibrant. It's rich. Has pretty good viewing angles. Now, a fair amount of these games do have box art, which is pretty cool. Oh, I don't know if I can take Game Boy games stretched out like this. Since there is no RetroArch support with this menu, there's no way to assign fast forward. So you have to just wait for this to slowly progress. So if you wanted to play Pokemon on here, you gotta be patient. I feel like most modern players use and abuse fast forward in Pokemon games. Well, that's kind of weird looking. Yeah, I mean, this is a giant Game Boy, but I don't necessarily like the Game Boy experience on here. I tell you what this would be good for though. Game Boy Advance. I mean, I don't know if this is scaled up or anything or has a shader. This is really, really good Game Boy Advance. See how PlayStation does. I'll tell you what, the menu changes slightly for PlayStation because you have disc control. But that's it. That's the only difference. I can't tell off the bat because there's no FPS, there's no data on screen, but this seems like it might be upscaled. Yeah, PlayStation's okay. You would expect PlayStation to be okay. Before we get to PSP, which is really good on here, we're going to go to N64, which, right out of the box, it sucks. It's really bad. Here, I'll show you. You can tell it's doing really well because the audio is completely desynced. You can also see, I don't know what the upscaling they have on here, but there's weird lines through the people's portraits. This chipset can handle N64. This setup they have by default can't. You can go in and manually edit your configuration file using the Mupen64 core that is set up already, or you can force it to use another core. Now, I could show you how I painstakingly fiddle-farted around for the better part of an hour, 2 hours today, trying to tweak all the different settings before I realized it was already on the Discord, and I felt like a fool. I tell you what, we're going to drive around for a little bit. You can see how just absolutely butt this performance is. Ugh. And then we're going to immediately switch over to the improved core settings. Whee! So I spent about 2 hours today screwing around with configuration files, and then I discovered that someone had already done that in a much more expansive way. It really improved N64, but for me it kind of broke the experience with some of the other emulators. So I combined the ideas. I took my original edits to the configuration file. I changed the core itself from Mupen64 to Parallel, and I put it on a GitHub, and all you do is download it. Don't trust Zoo. Don't trust Zoo, but trust me, download it, and just copy it onto your SD card. Super, super, super easy. It's not the best N64 performance, but it's a fair sight better than stock. So I showed you what files I changed. I'm going to put a link to those configuration files in the description. I'll also link to the other GitHub that will completely revamp this. It's not full custom firmware, but it revamps things. But in my experience, it broke some of the other emulators. So this is not too hot, not too cold. This is lukewarm, I guess, for little Goldilocks. And we'll finish up with some PSP. Now, there only are a couple actual games on here. The rest of these are PSP mini games I honestly never really even heard of. So let's find, let's do Dragon Ball Z. Now, this is running PPSSPP, and this is at 2x. It is using the Vulkan backend from what I can see in the configuration. And it's actually a really good experience. This is really, really good for PSP, which you would expect from the 3566 chip. Get dunked on, Cell. What's not disappointing is the PSP performance on this handheld. Well, Gary, it's time for What Did We Learn? We learned that the M18 from our friends again at Go Game Geek is a very interesting handheld. It's very ergonomic. It has a RK3566, which is a very sturdy chip. However, it is locked down behind some very inscrutable firmware. This isn't a high priority for the community in general, but there are some people working on it. There are some fixes out there already on GitHub. And then of course you have your Zoo half kind of rigged with duct tape setup that I'm using right now. All that being said, it is a very interesting handheld. What it's not interesting though is the price. This is going for around 90 bucks on Go Game Geek. You might be able to find a little bit cheaper on AliExpress stores. If you do want to get one of these through Go Game Geek, we have, bare minimum, we have a 10% coupon. We might even be able to offer a better coupon. I'm going to try to get a hold of my contact before this video goes live, and we will put that coupon code in the description. But it is a very pricey endeavor for what you get. I honestly, I can't recommend it in its current state. Just with the firmware that it comes with, maybe for a brand new user. But even then, N64 performance is kind of garbo. And it does come with a 64 gigabyte card, but not all the games on here are great. Even if you are going to get this as a gift and send it off and never have to touch it for them, they're not going to get the best games. They're not going to get the best N64 experience at all. And some of their more classic games, the aspect ratio is a little wonky. So it's not quite ready for prime time, which is kind of a shame because I really do like the ergonomics of it. It's an interesting design. It's reminiscent of the Doot, or of course the 405V. Although I think the ergonomics of this might actually be better than the 405V. Well, I don't know. It is pretty interesting. I just can't recommend it unless there's a market improvement in firmware. This one is kind of for me. But you know what? Maybe this will be my little tinkerer. Maybe I'll keep working on my stupid Zoo hack. It's not going to get too far because I don't know anything besides digging around in configuration files. But whatever. Even at $60, maybe $70, I would say no. Just no. You're better off getting like something in the 353 line, or the X55, or heck, even the Powkitty 2023. Any of those handhelds with the 3566 you're probably better off than this. And it's really, it's the firmware that's killing it. It has a lot of cool things going for it. A unique aspect ratio to the rest of the body, but the firmware just, right now, I wouldn't buy it unless you're really interested. So, I hope you're interested in this video. If you liked what you saw, give us a like. Give us a subscription if you're not already subscribed, and we will see you on the next video. So long.